Hi everyone, it's Doña Liz, and welcome to Mycelia Familia, where I would like to create a collective community where we can come together and create a safe space and a healthy lifestyle. I know in the past videos, Doña Cayel has been with me, but I have decided to set a boundary for myself and to try to go on my own route for myself. And I know it kind of sucks to be sitting here by myself, but there were some things that I was recognizing in terms of patterns, and that is today's topic. It's about patterns, understanding patterns. And for me, patterns can be triggers. And I know throughout my whole life, I grew up in Latin culture, and when you get in trouble, you either get scrutinized verbally or if you had someone in your family, they would physically teach you a lesson. And most of my childhood, I was being physically taught lessons. And I learned a lot of lessons because the physical was what helped me not to repeat those patterns so that I wouldn't get a physical punishment. And it's the same thing when you hurt somebody or when I'm hurting myself. And it took me a long time to understand things that were hurting me. And it took going to therapy, it took talking to professionals, and it took the biggest step for me was journaling. And I like to go back into my journals and reflect on things that that I probably used to do. And I tell myself, oh wow, it seems like I'm repeating certain patterns. What can I do not to repeat those patterns? And it's a simple fact as, I'm going to give you a silly example. So what I have here crinkling right in front of me is a bag of chips, right? Alright, a bag of chips. When I look at the back of these bag of chips, I look at the cards. Because in terms of my health, I know that mentally these chips provide me a sense of comfort when I am, going through something. And then on the back of these big bag of chips, so the serving size is 17 chips. And just imagine just the 17 chips. I'm eating possibly 15 grams of carbs. And now that's like a little over, just a tad bit over half of what a meal should be for myself. Now let's say I'm grabbing this bag of chips and this is what I'm gonna be eating for like breakfast. I know that's a bad example, but at some point in my life I was eating a bag of chips for breakfast because it was fast and easy access, fast and easy access of source of food, but it wasn't healthy for my body. And the reason why I'm bringing up the fact of carbs is because when I was pregnant with my second child, I had gestational diabetes. And having gestational diabetes taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about many different foods that are accessible in our stores that don't really benefit us. And it's the same thing with fruit. You know, certain fruits do carry a lot of sugar in them. And going back to the carbs, my understanding from a nutritionist point of view, from what they taught me, was that every meal that I'm intaking, it should at least have at least 25 carbs in it. And that is it for my meal. And that was really hard to keep track of the patterns of how to maintain my blood sugar, because it was hard to stay away from bread. It was hard to stay away from chips. Even milk has carbs in it, and I didn't even know that. But that is why, a professional had helped me understand and helped me recognize my own personal patterns in terms of how I was eating. And now I'm more wary about what I intake in terms of my food. Yeah, at times, I kind of do like eating a cupcake. But if I know that if I eat a whole cupcake, that cupcake is probably going to make my blood sugar go above the roof. And from what I learned, I have to eat 1/4 of that cupcake. Not a whole, not a half, but like a piece of it. Because it does withhold a lot of carbs. And it's the same thing with your actions. My actions of going out and buying these bag of chips, like I'm almost done with this, but most of these bags aren't full. So the true purpose here is that that's a big bag of chips, and it's almost gone. Not that I'm eating that every day for breakfast. What I am trying to start developing is making my cup of smoothies. I have a smoothie here. In that smoothie, I do have some sweet fruit in there. So, bananas carry a lot of sugar, from what I learned from a nutritionist. So, this is not as healthy, but I hope it does benefit my body. Because I will be going out and I will be taking a walk. And that's another pattern that I'm doing to prevent my body from having such a high blood sugar. Because when you intake high carbs, it is best that you go and you walk it off, or you run it off, or you go ride a bike. Because I tested this theory when I was pregnant. When I really, really, really wanted some ice cream or something sweet and good, I'd walk from my apartment all the way to the froyo shop and go get like a small cup, because I knew I couldn't have the bigger cup. So I would get the small cup with my favorite flavor. And It made me feel so good. And then after that, I would walk from the froyo shop all the way back to my apartment. And then I would check my blood sugar, and then I can see that it evened out. And I was like, I'm curious if I do that with everything that I consume with high carbs, that'll work. But that's not the case, okay? It's not the case every time. Because some things do have higher volumes of carbs. And it's the same thing with your actions, understanding your triggers. And understanding your triggers can be like, something's making me upset, something's making me frustrated, something's making me mad, something's making me happy, something's making me be silly. All emotions. When I get frustrated, I tend to close up. I'm more quiet. I ponder more. Sometimes my hands get sweaty, or I'll fidget a little bit more. And what helps me relieve my frustration is I just write in my journal. Or at least I try my best to write in my journal. Lately, I just recently started doing poems. And it felt good to write a poem last night. I wrote one. It came to me pretty fast. I was able to create it within less than 5 minutes. And once I was done, I read it and I said, I'm going to post this. I might as well post my art. Because that, me writing, me drawing, even walking outside is a form of art. Everything that we're doing is a form of art. What I'm doing right now is a form of art. And I have to do my best to understand right now, in this time of living, I have to understand the patterns that have been hurting me. And those can be triggering too. And I have to try my best to develop skills to prevent me from being hurt like that again. Even if it's from other people, or even if it's from within myself. Like, for example, the bag of chips. This is hurting my body if I were to eat a whole bag of chips. And I have to discipline myself, okay? I have to recognize the pattern. All right, this thing says 17 chips equals to 15 grams. All right, maybe I should eat half of that. And then I'll be able to have an additional item to eat along with the chips. And it's the same thing with going to school. I know that when I was going to school, a pattern that helped me retain information was I would be that dorky person who would go sit in the front sometimes, and I would write everything down in a notebook. And I know that the teacher would always say, I'll post this PowerPoint, or I'll post this, what I'm showing you guys, on our course, so you guys don't have to write anything down. But I still wrote things down, because in that time of the lecture, it's what helped me retain things that they were saying from what they're bouncing off the slide, plus some more things that they add that's not on the slide. And that's what helps me retain information of what's being taught to me and right in front of me. And there are moments where I do catch myself, if there's a room full of a lot of people, I don't tend to sit in the front. No. I tend to sit in the way back because I like to observe the audience. I like to, in a sense, see a bigger picture. But that's just my own pattern of how I go about things in a class. There are times where I do build that courage, if I feel safe enough, the many times that I have been in a space full of a lot of people, I will eventually sit at the front. I'll inch my way to the front. Because the front is the best view. And these are patterns that, like, help me get through that time of my educational development. And it's the same thing with work. I learned a lot within my job about time management. I know that anytime that I was 5 minutes late, someone would say, "Hey, you're 5 minutes late. Why didn't you call us? Why didn't you text me? Why didn't you email me letting me know you're running a little late?" And at the time, the best answer I can give is that I was already on my way, so I didn't feel like I had the capability to message you while I was already on my way. And I know that even though when I'm under that pressure, that pattern of pressure, I should still, if I still see that I have that little bit of time, I should still stop and send that quick message. Because I know it's important ethically to let your colleagues know at a job, "Hey, I will be 5 minutes late." Because recently, from what I learned, is that those 5 minutes could have been focused on a task that all your coworkers could have been doing, but they were waiting on me to get there so that they can continue the project that was needed to be taken care of. And it's the same thing, going to a church. I know I've definitely have shown up to church a little late, and I can sense the feeling of the uneasiness, like, "Oh, I am sorry, like, but I'm here, I still showed up." And over time, that feeling of pressure, it tends to go away. But I have to recognize my pattern of time management. I have to recognize, all right, what can I do next time to prevent myself from being late? Because I know this is not just hurting myself, but this is hurting others around me who are also trying to get this project done. We are all shooting for a mission, and that is to delve into this project. And it's the same thing with myself. I have to understand patterns that, go on in my household too. So, for example, let's say, as simple as not snoozing my alarm in the mornings so that I can get my kids to school on time. Because if I were to snooze and sleep in for 10 minutes or 5 minutes, those 5 to 10 minutes where I should have gotten up, it would have helped me tremendously rather than rushing and trying to gather the things that I do need. And those 5 or 10 minutes that I slept in could have helped me prepare a lot more calmly. And I have to learn that pattern of self-discipline to get up when I hear it, or set earlier alarms to help me get, you know, if I have to get up at 7:30, I set an alarm for 6:50. Yeah, I know, that's wild. But I put 6:50 because it helps me get that 10 minutes that I so want, that I so want. And then I set another alarm at 7, and then 7:10. And 7:10 is when I start to get up, because I know it gets me a little process to wake up. I go use the bathroom, and then I start to get ready or get things prepared. And that, setting things for myself ahead of time helps me prepare myself for what's to come. And it's the same thing with recognizing your triggers. When you're feeling upset, I have to create the habit of, all right, you guys, I have to go use the bathroom really quick. And that short separation, that short walk, and then while I'm in the bathroom, splash some water on my face so I can calm down. And that space apart from whatever had disturbed my peace and caused frustration, that separation and providing me myself that space helps me, in a sense, regulate myself. If not, if I can't use a bathroom, then I have to do things in that moment to physically try to relax myself, which is doing simple breathing, even though I'm trying my best not to show people that I'm regulating myself. I count in my head, or I start to think about different colors, the color schemes in my head, like blue, red, purple, blue, red, purple. I kind of play that, and I start to develop a song in my head to kind of distract my mind from that frustration and understand that pattern of trigger, understand that pattern of emotion, and trying to develop a different pattern to help me get through that moment. And I provided so many examples here. And the point is, we all, doesn't matter how young, it doesn't matter how old you are, we are all always going to be understanding patterns, recognizing patterns. Patterns can be emotions, patterns can be actions, patterns can be triggers, patterns can be routine, patterns can be a lot of things. What you see behind me, there's a lot of patterns. And it's up to us to try to be more self-disciplined and try to develop a more flowing pattern where it doesn't feel so zigzag or really narrow. Like you want like a nice flow, like a smooth flow. And that's what I always seek. And I know patterns can be different for everybody, and how people take care of their patterns can look very, very different. And I like to ask a lot of questions. That's my form of patterns, to understanding patterns. um, but yeah, I know right now there's a lot of things going on in our world where people, are trying to grasp and understand things, and those are also patterns. And once we constantly see the same thing happening over and over again, ask yourself, why is this happening again? What can I do to change this pattern to a better pattern? And that is the lesson for today. I know last week, normally we try to post a video on Fridays, but life gets in the way sometimes. Sorry, life doesn't get in the way. Life just happens. Okay, it does not get in the way. And right there is another example of how I'm changing my word structure to create a better pattern. So, I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. And I hope you guys find some time to journal, do some art, go outside, listen to some music, hang out with some awesome people, and just try to find a sense of peace. Adios, Mycelia Familia.